Welcome to the Whiskey and Wisdom Podcast, coming to you from the Cargo District Recording Studios in Wilmington, North Carolina. I am Tyler Yaw, and this is my co-host,
Chris Kellum.
And today we have Jake with us, who is the band director at Topsail High School. But before we get into that, Chris, what are we sipping on today?
So, unfortunately, this is my second sip of this bill. Actually, not unfortunately. Let's be real. This is actually a really good whiskey. It's Weldon Mills from Weldon, North Carolina, and we got the Weldon Mills Select. So it's more of a small batch from them, which is actually kind of cool. This collection, or this distillery, is really nice because Weldon Mills actually won in 2021 Best Micro Whiskey Distillery in the U.S., which I didn't know that was an award you could get. I guess it's kind of like James Beard Award. Multiple people win it. But no, this is really nice. They do use local corn and barley, and pretty much most of their stuff comes from North Carolina. They're based like northern North Carolina up on the Roanoke River. They even use that water in the distilling process.
Wow.
But no, this thing smells amazing. It actually smells like a real whiskey. Not that the other ones haven't, but this one has a lot of flavor to it, it smells like.
This extra spices.
Clean.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's clean.
Cheers.
All right, cheers.
It's pretty good.
It is good. Hit you in the back of the throat at first.
That's what she said.
Thanks, Chris. You can obviously tell we've already drank a thing of whiskey here. So.
No, that's spicy.
It is spicy.
Yeah.
I don't.
It has a good bodied flavor to it, though.
Yeah, like it has a different layers. It's like an onion. It's different layers.
Like
Not
Shrek?
a good way to
Yeah, I would
explain
say
it.
like an ogre.
Not a good way to explain it, but yeah, it's good.
All right, Jake. So tell us what you do, how you got here, and I know you have an interesting story how you got to Wilmington. So go into that too.
Yeah, so my name is Jake. I've been married for 3 years now to my wife, Sarah, who's awesome.
Congratulations.
And yeah, thanks. And I've been the band director at Topsail High School for 8 years, which is just north of Wilmington in Hampstead, a coastal community. So I grew up in northeast Georgia, a small town called Blairsville. It's really close to the Tennessee and North Carolina border, kind of where all three come together. And I went to college a few towns over, called Young Harris College, and then started working at Murphy High School for a few years, and then came to Wilmington, and I've been here ever since.
So Murphy is it actually like truly in North Carolina? Is it one of those like borderline cities? Because I legit have never heard of this place.
Yeah, it's actually in North Carolina. It's the farthest west city. So, I mean, again, that county borders Tennessee and Georgia. So, I mean, I grew up in Blairsville. It's a really cool small town. Basically, if you look at a map, it's the place right in the middle where there's no interstates. So all the interstates kind of go around it. We're 2 hours from everything. 2 hours from Atlanta, from Knoxville, Asheville, 2 hours from everything. And pretty much have to go over a mountain to get anywhere.
Oh, wow.
So that's where I grew up. Went to college at Young Harris College.
Yeah, so how did you end up in Wilmington, of all places, from there?
So I had a really bad experience teaching at Murphy, and actually almost quit teaching altogether.
Wow.
When I was there. So I just started looking for other jobs. I didn't know if I was going to go into teaching again, and interviewed at a few places in Georgia, but I didn't really like there was going to be more of the same, I felt. Mm-hmm. And then saw Pender County had an opening. I was like, where is Pender County at? So searched it. I had never been to Wilmington, never been to any place out here, but I've always loved the beach. So decided to come out and interviewed, and yeah, the rest is history. Been here 8 years and really enjoy it.
Oh, wow. You don't have to go too far into detail if you don't want to, but what made the teaching experience so bad at the first school?
Was it like the environment, or was it just like, you just didn't feel supported as a new teacher? Because I know that happens sometimes.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of a mix of all of it. I think it was a little bit of the environment, a little bit of the support. Some of it's just not being experienced, really. You know, coming straight out of school and stuff. Knowing what not to do is pretty much what I learned, I think, at that.
Right.
But yeah, so I really have had good success out here, and I've met a lot of great people. I'm here on the podcast because of people I've met through my wife.
Because you said you like the beach, which this might sound real ignorant of me. Had you actually been to the beach before you moved out here?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, we used to go to Florida all the time when we lived in Blairsville. But as far as being to North Carolina beaches, I had never been to a North Carolina beach. Been to South Carolina a few times, but never to North Carolina. But again, like, so when I was coming out for the interview, the first thing I did was drove to Surf City because it was kind of close.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So did the bypass around Wilmington, drove up, went straight to the Welcome Center at Surf City. And it was January, because I started in February. It was January, and it was really cold. And I had a big jacket on, and I get out and I walk up to the top, and I was like, I could get used to this. This is pretty nice. And I got back in the car, drove down, and did the interview. First place I ate at in Wilmington was Copper Penny.
Oh yeah.
That night, not a bad place to start.
Yeah.
So it really just, it's a great place to live. I think we're all very fortunate to live here.
Yeah. So since you're at Topsail High School, did you teach at the same time that Joe did, the guy who was on the episode not too long ago?
Yeah. I didn't. So he left about a year or so before I did. But yeah, so he had coached for, I think, 3 or 4 years at Topsail, left and went to Noble Middle School, which is actually where my wife teaches. But again, I didn't know Joe at all.
Yeah.
So, but I know Joe, I know Chris, and Chris's wife, Emily, and all of that through Noble Middle.
It's such a small world in the education community in New Hanover and Pender County.
Right.
Tell me about it. That was super awkward when I started dating Emily and went to one of her teacher functions, and my 6th grade and 8th grade science teacher, as well as math teacher, were all there like, oh my God, Chris.
Oh, wow.
and I was like,
This is weird.
This is real weird. And I said, cheers.
So tell us a little bit more about being a band director. For me, anyway, I'm very ignorant in the sense of just music in general in that sense and kind of what your job entails. So give us a little bit more detail on that.
So I'm in charge of the marching band, concert band, jazz winter guard, which is kind of an indoor version of what color guard does with marching band.
Oh, didn't know that existed.
So, and then basically, just in charge of all of that.
Are you literally teach all year round? Because marching band is in the fall for football. Then you have a winter guard, which I never knew that. I always just assumed you just said concert.
They just ended. Their last competition was yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Oh, so that's further. Well, yeah, I guess it is full winter because spring just started. And then obviously I'm assuming your springtime, you still have to teach.
Yeah. So, I mean, it starts out with marching band in August. And really we plan all of that. We take quite a long time to plan all of the details with that. So like scheduling is actually starting right now for the fall.
Ooh.
So looking at schedules and stuff for next year and basically planning out through December for that. We do concert band, which is kind of like your orchestra setting. Mm-hmm. And jazz band generally starts in January. So we run that through the spring. Mm. So it's definitely a 12-month job. I try to keep it to 11 and take July off. That's kind of the time that I need to just step away for a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely important to kind of rejuvenate before getting back into it again.
So what do you do in July?
So Sarah and I really like to travel. We've been to a lot of different countries. Actually, I have some family that is from Spain, some extended family that's from Spain. So we have been there. So yeah, we generally try and travel, just try and spend quality time with each other because Sarah's pretty much single for about 3 months out of the year with all of the time that I have to devote to marching band in the fall.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. One of my favorite things when Joe was on the podcast, he gave us the motto that they have at North Brunswick, which is pride, work, win. Do you have a motto that's over at Topsail?
Yeah, I mean, our motto is tradition, excellence, inspiration. So just to start in with to be in the tradition, to always strive for music excellence, but then to inspire others to continue to use music as their outlet.
So you do inspiration for all your kids. I've seen some competitions and that you guys have won some awards. Do you think that it helps, like, as your school motto, it helps you kind of like inspire, bringing more kids into the band or like pushing your kids further along?
Definitely. I feel that as the band grows and is successful, that creates more interest in the program. Generally, my focus as an educator is on people, and it has to be people first. Actually, so going back a little bit, this was before COVID happened. I actually was on another podcast called Fuller's Music Podcast, and I'm going to go on the record and say that this podcast is better because whiskey. So,
we have to entice people on here somehow.
Right. And so what I was talking about on the Fuller's Music Podcast was a thing we use in education called SEL, which is social and emotional learning, and that's a really hot topic right now with COVID. But so go back to what I was talking about on Fuller's Music Podcast was I'm a pretty sarcastic person.
I think most of us are.
Yeah. I like sarcasm. I enjoy it, sometimes too much. And so I'm really fortunate to teach some really intelligent kids and that go on to multiple colleges, have full rides to universities, that are going to governor's school, that are going to NCSSM, which is the North Carolina School of Science and Math. And so when I first got to Topsail, I had a few students, we were doing recruitment letters, and I had a few students that were writing out envelopes and basically just putting an address on them, put some stamps on them, and I handed them everything, showed them what to do on the computer, and just assumed that they knew how to address an envelope. And got it back, and not a single envelope was addressed correctly. And I wasted a whole bunch of stamps. I didn't tell my bookkeeper. I just went and got more stamps because that probably was expensive. But no, so it really, like, I was like, you guys don't know how to address an envelope? They had no idea. So me being sarcastic, I started teaching them how to address envelopes one day in class. We took like 20, 30 minutes out of our 90-minute block to do that. And so, I mean, and it turns out like a lot of the kids really like thoroughly enjoyed it. And they were like, why don't we do this more? I don't know how to write a check. I don't know how to use a debit or a credit card. So I started doing that. And it turned into more of a culture thing where, again, it's focused on people, not the music. The music is the product of caring about people first. And that's truly kind of where we gone with it. And the great part about it is that it's created a culture where the students are actually taking initiative to do it themselves. I've had drum majors that come up with their own lesson. I had one, the one that sticks out to me the most is actually a student that graduated a few years ago, but he did one right at Thanksgiving of like how thankful he was for everything going on in his life and why he's thankful, and like showed this really cool video of this grandma making this recipe, but like half the class was like crying in the back because he was talking about like, listen to your elders, like be thankful that they're still here with you if you have that opportunity. So, I mean, it's things like that are just like, wow. But again, the focus is on people, not just the music. The music is the product of that.
Yeah, those are probably the things that will stick out to those students more so than a song that they learned for the marching band or something, right? Probably just those lifelong lessons that'll probably stick with them. That's powerful.
Definitely. I mean, my high school band director always used to say, like, you're always going to remember how you felt.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. There's so many people that will make a connection with somebody because they actually stopped, took a second, and like listened to what they were asking for. Because I know, especially like a lot of kids, I feel like nowadays they're totally side topic is they want to make a ton of money, but they don't know how to, and they're stepping on top of other people. And I feel like you can make money by stopping and listening to people, because that's what I've done. And I've slowly started making more and more money over my lifetime because I listen to what the person's saying. And if you come to me, like I had a lady who's like, hey, can you make this specific ring with 14 different stones? And it's like,
I can.
It might be expensive, but your best bet, because I'm hearing what you're saying, that's not my specialty. I'll either turn you over to this person here who actually knows what they're doing. And if it's nothing we can do, how about I pull a Miracle on 34th Street and send you down the street to this guy over here? Because I know that's what he's good at, and he probably won't charge you an arm and a leg because it'll probably be expensive because it's not my specialty. But I think because I learned that in school. Growing up, like you pick up things, but I think school nowadays have kind of shifted because certain people have put their hands into it and shifted public schools away from actually helping educate the kids on the world around them to just pushing them through the pipeline.
The way that I've always kind of seen public school in general, at least for me anyway, is the two main things that I would hope that students would get out of it is to learn how to learn, and then to also learn how to operate and work with other students their own age and then other adults around them. And actually, with that being said, I know Joe mentioned about COVID and how one of the hardest parts of his job right now is getting kids to interact with each other properly because COVID being away for 2 years made such an impact. Is that something that you've noticed as well?
Absolutely. I mean, it's been a struggle. The students they've gone through a lot. I think they're more resilient than we sometimes give them credit for. Mm-hmm. With that being said, doesn't mean that hides the fact that there are definitely some issues that are going on that haven't been before. Social media has been a much bigger influence. I think we can see that in culture in general, not just in school. And in school is just a product where we see that, because school is really, it's community based. I mean, you're seeing you're the best and the worst of your community in your school building all the time.
Oh, for sure.
And yeah, I mean, I think that's at every school, not just Topsail, but it's definitely been an issue. I know my wife, and I'll say, Sarah and Emily, I'll speak for them, I guess. Like, they're dealing with a lot of issues too in their classrooms that they didn't have to deal with before. I don't think it's anything that we can't overcome and that we can't work through. The problem is with the education system is that it's very slow to adapt to change. And that's an issue. Mm-hmm. And that's something that really is a whole nother topic that we could talk about for a long time. But basically, we have teachers that are already working really hard to teach, but now they're being required or asked to volunteer more time to be part of like intervention teams and stuff to be able to help students with SEL, that social and emotional learning issue, which again is great. It sounds fantastic at its core, but they're not hiring anyone else in the building to assist with that. It's just, again, something else piled on top of teachers. It's very emotionally draining because, again, we do want to invest in people. It's why we're in education. But the problem with that is that it creates burnout, and you're seeing that through a lot of teachers leaving or just changing jobs or maybe not feeling valued in what they do. I'm very fortunate where I don't have to adhere to a lot of the state guidelines. I do. Don't get me wrong, but I don't have to adhere as much as a science teacher or like my wife or a social studies teacher or a math teacher. I can take liberty and say, hey, we're going to take 20 minutes out of a week and go through this social and emotional. And I just think it's funny that, I was doing that before this COVID stuff ever happened. And I truly believe that the band room has that culture and creates that culture. I know sports do too. I'm not trying to I love sports. My wife and I watch football. We're watching some March Madness right now. St. Pete. It's pretty cool.
That is pretty awesome to watch.
Yeah. But, so sports have that value too, but anything that's truly like taking kids, we're just reaching a different type of kid.
Yeah.
Anything that takes kids and puts them in a room with a positive environment is really where it's at. And then that's really where kids will remember the most. I mean, that's why I'm a band director, because it happened to me in high school too. You know, and I want to be able to continue that experience for the thousands of kids I'll teach in my career.
I think that's the great thing about the extracurriculars in general is you don't necessarily have to teach to a test. Kind of like what you were saying, the science teachers or social studies teachers, you have to teach to that test. And you have 90 minutes with these kids in a block. You can have a lot more leeway just outside of the music realm. And I think that's powerful with what you're doing too. And going out of your way to teach them how to address envelopes and to write checks and use credit and debit cards. Those things are going to stick with them forever.
Yeah, definitely. Also tell them, like, a lot of my students are dual enrolled at Cape Fear and like a community college there. That's where they can go to take a college class. They get college credit for it. It transfers anywhere in the state to any university and stuff. And I always recommend, but also like we don't have to send kids to college. Like, I think that's a common misconception that we all hear a lot, like, oh, we have to send our kid to college. I mean, college is great. I loved my college experience. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I mean, I'm where I am today because of that. But I don't think that everyone has to go to college. In fact, we need auto mechanics. We need somebody to fix my car. I don't know how to do it.
Right.
I don't know if anybody's know how to do it here, so that's a really important thing. And my brother-in-law actually is in the HVAC business and does really well.
He's probably killing it right now.
He is. He's busy all the time because there's nobody that does it. And I think that's great. And just encouraging kids, like, do what you want to do. Like if you want to go to a trade school, go to a trade school.
Yeah.
In fact, I think one of the I was reading an article that like elevator mechanics make like over $100,000 a year to work on an elevator. Yeah, Sherry Berry. That's right. Of course, we can no longer see her signature in the elevators now, which is really sad. That's unfortunate.
If you're not from North Carolina.
Yeah,
I don't know if we
right. Yeah, everyone who's listening from other states and countries is like, who in the heck is this Sherry Berry lady?
No, I always see that as funny. I was like, that's the smartest move ever. But I hate you for doing it. Like I just am tired of politics sometimes, especially where it comes to learning. I'm like, I understand. Just like I love church. I grew up in church, but I'm like, there's certain things that you shouldn't force upon people. We should have to learn it ourselves, which that's just the weird thoughts I have.
But if you think, I mean, Tyler, what you said earlier, like my goal as an educator is to make you think and know what to do without me anymore.
Right.
You know, if you come to a conclusion yourself, you have more value in that. You build value in that. And then that creates, you had that idea, not somebody else told you about that idea. And then you believe in that idea. Yeah. That's life. That's not just education. Yeah. But if you can teach that in education, then you're doing something.
Yeah. The teachers that I had that I remember the most and have the most impact on my life were the ones that taught me critical thinking skills. And not the ones that kind of what you were talking about, not the ones that taught me that 2 + 2 is 4, but trying to take a problem and use critical thinking and creativity to solve it.
Which is, again, like that's what band does. Like that's what we do. I mean, the creative side, you have the creative side, but you also have the mathematical side, which is like the rhythm. It's all about fractions and dividing. So, I mean, but then you're dealing with, I have 120 people or so in band, give or take, every year. So, I mean, they're having to work together to create a product.
Yeah,
I mean, they're outside for months at a time, sweating and torturing themselves for what? 5 minutes of a show on a Friday night? You know, like there has to be something else there, not just a show.
Yes.
Very true.
So, talking about, you brought show up, which made me think of Drumline, because as a young African-American growing up in the early 2000s, that movie had me all wanting to try and like go in, and I realized that I have rhythm, but not that kind of rhythm, which I feel is like a whole nother setup. And then I also have friends who've been in band. Like I had a couple kids who went to App State back in the day when App State went for that 3-peat and killed Michigan in football. And so I understand quite a bit more than Tyler, which isn't much.
I was going to say, it doesn't take much to beat me, but
but I know that there's two different styles of drumming, and I learned that, or marching band, as a joke, because in Drumline, that was the joke, is that at the beginning, this is how it was. It was very strict. We're doing this basic, we're doing the classics, and they're like, well, the competition is just banging that ass, because they're doing a totally different style. So on that note, what is your style at your school?
Yeah, so there's, like you said, Chris, there's two different styles. There's a show style, and then there's DCI style. So show style is much more like about the crowd. They're really trying to get the crowd involved. They're really trying to hype everybody up. It's very entertaining. It's a different way that they're marching. It's a lot more dancing, a lot more choreography, a lot more freedom and creativity, really. And then you have DCI style, which stands for Drum Corps International, or core style for short. And that's very rudimentary. It's very like, you think military band, very basic, very precise, very simple. And that's kind of what we do at Topsail. There are a few bands locally that are show style that I know of. New Hanover and North Brunswick are both more of a show style band. But we, most of the bands around here are the core style. So the core style, like, it's kind of changing. I mean, by the time I retire in 20 years or so, it's probably going to change again. But it's theatrical, kind of. Like there's part of that in there. Like shows have a theme. And you teach that theme, but everything's very precise and very accurate.
Yeah. No, I understand. When you say militaristic, because your marching is like, all right, so on this note, everyone's taking this exact step, and you're doing the roll stepping, I'm assuming.
Right.
And you guys have the smooth transitions, like left and right. I always think of those like crazy college football game, like intermissions where they're like
Exactly.
doing the whole
like
video.
Ohio State stuff.
Yeah, that's what I think of when you say DCI, and it makes sense around here. Let's be real; it's a cultural thing.
It is very.
And I
much
know
so.
you're building. You have a specific culture in band. Like there's certain people who do band and certain people who don't, but it's definitely a cultural thing based on where you're at. So, living from here, I understand why New Hanover would be a show style. Totally wasn't expecting North Brunswick.
No, definitely didn't expect that either.
But because I've known you for a little while, you guys do competitions on a semi-regular basis. You do at least what, 1 a year, 2 a
No,
year?
we generally, so for marching band, we do 4.
wow.
We actually host our own at Topsail, and then we travel to other places. Generally, I try and change it up. Like we'll do some locally, but then we'll travel to Raleigh and see some better bands because I think that's really important to see. But a band is expensive. You know, like there's a lot of
I'm sure.
expense that goes into it. I mean, on a marching show every year, we're looking at $35,000 to $40,000 a year for the show. I mean, you got to think like you're taking in the drill, which is what you were saying, Chris, like the left to right movements, the making the different shapes and all of that on the field. And then you have, I mean, we do things like props, which is the theatrical side of stuff. We have electronic equipment. We have all the instruments and maintenance, uniforms, instructors, color guard equipment, you know, which is the visual side of things. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, but again, like what the kids are getting out of it is a really great skill beyond just music. And ultimately, like my goal is to make them advocates for what we do. I mean, again, the product is always people, or sorry, not the product. The base is always people. The product is music.
I like that.
Yeah. Before the podcast, you were talking to us that you were down in Disney. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was fun. We took the band down to Disney, and we marched down Main Street. It was in the Magic Kingdom, so that was great.
Oh, that's neat.
They had a great time. I mean, that's again, people are always going to remember how they felt, and I know everybody felt pretty good after that parade. It was a lot of fun.
We were talking about social media before, and before it started too, because we were giving you a hard time about not following our Instagram.
Yeah.
But you said that you, I guess, kind of have an Instagram, but not really run by you.
Yeah, it's called the Wentzek Archives. I don't suggest following it, by the way. But it's basically like, where's Waldo? With Wentzek. So yeah, anytime they see me, they take a picture and just post it or make a terrible meme. So Chris, that might be another. Yeah, right. Yeah. That might be something you want to follow for your meme pages. You know?
I'm totally going to do that right now, actually. Everyone, like, because we always post like plugs like, hey, follow me on this, follow me on that. Totally away from work and everything. Why have you not joined Instagram?
I don't know. I'm guessing that weird millennial.
Did you skip? Because I feel like I've sent you a TikTok before. Like, do you have TikTok?
No.
You really? You're younger than me, but you have like that old person mentality. You're like, I'm on Facebook. That's all. That's all you get out of me.
I probably should. A lot of people give me a hard time about it. So
It's probably not a bad thing either, but
no, I'm curious because like I said, we're in that age where we grew up
without it, right? You know, like,
yeah.
Well, I grew up without it, but then like I remember fighting my siblings for computer time so I could get on and update my MySpace page.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then I got
MySpace pages, editing the whole thing, like backgrounds, and those
like a junior coder for that.
Those were the days, man.
And then Facebook came up, and I remember, which probably dates me a little bit, but I remember when Facebook came out, and the only way you could get it, because they had expanded finally, was if you had a college email address.
Yeah.
And I had friends in high school who had college email addresses because they were dual enrolled. So they had Facebook. And I'm like, how the hell did you get this? And then they finally had that, like, you can only get it if you get an invite. And I'm like, those were the good old days. Like when it was invite only.
Yeah.
It was people, you could post stuff and people knew you. And now I feel like it's just kind of expanded so much. There's so many groups and there's so many just random things going on. But because social media has expanded so much, I feel like it also affects your everyday life for most people, especially kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
and I mean, getting into the education stuff about that. That's definitely been something with the SEL portion of what's happening right now. That's been a big effect. I think again, band is naturally like an environment that's inviting. So this is another reason why music in general, not just band, but choir, orchestra, all of that is really important in our schools, because it creates that environment where it breaks down those awkward barriers that a lot of because again, like all of us in this room, we grew up in a time where we didn't have that.
Right.
I remember dial up at the house.
Exactly. Yeah.
All the weird noises in here. And then somebody picked up the phone. Gosh, somebody picked up the phone.
Yeah. I was waiting 5 minutes for that.
Trying to download a picture for 10 minutes. But yeah, with now everything's just so instant. It's a great thing, but it's a terrible thing too. I mean, we have opportunities like this to share our experiences with other people and maybe make somebody's day better, which is awesome. But then you have things that are super negative with it too.
Yeah.
So just trying to find a balance there and trying to basically make the time in my room like that they're not on their phones, that they're doing something different.
Have you noticed that play a big role in the mental health of the students as well too? Just trying to, for lack of a better term, kind of like keeping up with the Joneses type of thing.
Yeah, it definitely has created a different environment. I mean, the students are different than when we were in high school. They're just totally different people, different values, I think.
Yeah.
Society changes and they're definitely different than when we grew up.
With that being said, what's probably one of the most difficult parts of your job right now?
Time.
Yeah.
Ooh, time. The amount of time that I have to put in. And I mean, man, my wife is a super patient woman because it takes a lot of time and dedication to do what I do well. And she's amazing at being able to deal with that. And again, in the fall, it's a ton of time. It's like a football coach in the fall. You're constantly going. You're just going all the time. So, but Sarah's super supportive and really great with all of that. So, but basically just making balancing time, scheduling things out to make sure that we're carving out time for us and personal time too, not just work. Because you could totally do that. And could be totally consumed by that.
Sorry.
That was pretty good.
Just so everyone knows, Chris likes to make gestures while we're in here.
Work.
Right.
I'm like, you say it in my head automatically. I'm like, Rihanna. No, I did not get up and twerk. I was just bouncing.
Just was working. Just working.
Yeah. Yeah. The random times that you just hear random laughing when we're recording, it's because Chris is dancing or something.
All right. So because of my randomness I got going on, favorite place you guys have traveled to? Because I know you've been to a lot. I've known you for at least 3 years, and it's been, you guys are always traveling. It makes me, I was like, man, I'm so jealous.
I'm going to have to say Spain. We have extended family that lives there, and we went to Majorca, which is a island in the middle of the Mediterranean. It's basically like the Florida of Europe. It's like the Florida of Europe. There's a lot of people that travel there from Germany, from Poland, from UK, from all of those places. But it is absolutely gorgeous. The people are fantastic. The food is even better. It's just a really cool culture. And I get to claim that I have family over there now. So, because I do.
Yeah. So, it makes it even more fun.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. The second pause, I have a tattoo of the world on my arm, and he said Majorca, and I was looking at it. I was like, okay, I understand that.
So, you were just looking at your arm. I was like, I don't know what was he going. Got it. I see it now. I'm
it's like an atlas on your arm over there.
Yes.
All right, we're starting to come up on our time today, but before we end, we have to ask the absolute special question that we have on here is, if you were to tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
I'm a big believer that everything happens for a reason.
Love that.
Everything happens for a reason, good or bad. I am where I am today. I'm here with you guys right now making this podcast because of the people that I know. And the experiences that I've had that's molded me into the person that I am, but also the person that I'll become. And I firmly believe that. But with that being said, I would encourage myself and others to truly think about the small decisions that you're making too. To just really think about everything, because every decision that you make affects you or other people or relationships. And just really think about everything that you're doing for you and others.
Yeah. I like that a lot. That's something we haven't really touched on the podcast yet, but I definitely think that's important, especially nowadays with everyone being under a microscope for everything that you're doing. So if you're going to be under a microscope, make sure it's going to be something good to be even larger.
Totally squirrel thought, because everything is under a microscope. And I was looking at the Supreme Court hearings.
Yeah, the nominee.
And I was like, oh my gosh, they legit, because the Supreme Court isn't a lifetime appointment. And it's just so crazy to me that you could do something, you have an action that you judged on 20 years ago, and they're like, so I brought this back up to you.
What was your thoughts in this process?
Yeah.
It's 20 years ago.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not going to remember that. But that's a thing that we have to think of, is like all the little things, like you said, add up. It's butterfly effect. That one thing you did here will affect something you do, maybe not tomorrow, but it'll be 20 years down the road. And you got to remember, like, cause and effect to everything.
Yeah. But again, it goes back to like, has it made me the person I am? Like, I'm married to who I'm married to. I live where I live. I know who I know because of the actions that I've had. But again, like, there's always moments within that time that you really could have done better, you know? So growth. That's what I tell my kids all the time, like growth mindset. I'm not expecting you to be 100% better today. I'm expecting you to be 1% better every day. And then 100 days later, you're 100% better than you were.
Yeah. One of the things that I learned too, we brought up,
Maybe.
I'm like, I don't know.
Hopefully.
it's close to that. During the 75 hard program that I did, we've talked about it before in the podcast, but one of the things that very similar to what you were saying there is the further I got along in it, I was getting disappointed the way that I started it. And something that I had to keep telling myself is, you're growing throughout this process. You can't be upset about the person you were because you've grown now. So I think that's very similar to kind of what you were talking about too, is just make those progressions and just realize what you've become in life, really.
And back, I mean, I know I'm kind of straying on back and forth here, but I mean, back to like students, I feel like they are very afraid to make mistakes right now. And we grow from mistakes. We should grow from our mistakes. And that's something that SEL portion, that social emotional learning portion is really, that's, I think, where a lot of people are struggling. They're afraid to take a risk, any risk. If it's just like to say something in class, like, what if I'm wrong? Okay, well, what if you're wrong? So what?
But what if you're right?
But what, right. Exactly. You know, like
and even if you are wrong, you always learn from it.
Exactly. It's still a learning moment.
I trained at Brunson's MMA and fitness with Palmer. And one of the biggest things, every time there's a loss, it's not a loss, it's a lesson.
Right. Yep.
And that's the biggest thing, especially if you're a student, especially if you're a fighter. When you take an L on something, it has to be a lesson, because if you don't learn from it, you haven't grown.
Absolutely.
100%.
All right. Well, on that note, I think we will wrap it up today. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Every download helps. Please share with family members, friends, anyone you think that'll enjoy.
Apparently, we also have a Buy Me a Coffee.
Yeah, we do have a Buy Me a Coffee now. So you can actually go to our link tree on Instagram right now. And if you want to support us that way as well, that is even more fantastic too. Anything that helps. We have this brand new studio here that we're paying for and whatnot, so that always helps.
Yes, it does.
Thank you so much again for listening. And especially thank you, Jake, for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us while drinking some whiskey.
Absolutely. It was a great time. Thanks, guys.
See you all next week.
Have a good one.
Cheers.